You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
As ready as I can be.
3, 2, and 1. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Red Thoughts with Perry Picasso. I'm your host, Perry Picasso, and today I'm joined by a lovely guest.
Yulissa Mendoza.
And just like,
Yulissa Mendoza.
yeah! Welcome, Yulissa. Yulissa is very talented, multidisciplinary artist whose work is currently being shown right now at the Cheech at the Desde Los Cielos group show on now until March 16. And they have a piece in there titled
Madre.
Woo!
Yay!
I'm very excited to dive deep into that because it is a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
It is like, yeah, when I was like looking at it and you were explaining it to me, I was so excited. And I think you blew it out of the water. So, but yeah, before we get into that though, I would love to hear more about you, your life. How did you get into all of this? Because you do so much, and I'm just curious, like, yeah, how has this journey been for you?
I do a lot.
You do a lot. Like every time I'm like, I see you, you have like some new project, some new something. Like you're always booked and busy. Like today, you had like 3 things that you're doing today. So like,
Yeah.
how did you get to this point? Like,
Keeps things exciting. I don't like being bored. I don't get
real.
bored also, but I think for art specifically, I'm going to focus on that.
Okay.
But
Art instead of fashion.
fashion,
'Cause that is another good
photography,
thing.
creative directing.
So then have you always been creative?
Yeah, ever since I was a child.
Okay. So
I mainly drew when I was a child, and
Okay.
I love that.
did you play like dress up as well as a kid? Were you very much into like putting on like different clothing and stuff, like expressing yourself?
No,
No.
actually.
Okay.
But I think where it came from is I had Bratz dolls, and those
Okay.
are the most fashionable dolls over Barbie, honestly.
absolutely.
Like I felt so seen in Bratz dolls.
Yeah.
I would change their clothes all the time.
Okay. So since you were like, okay, you were creative directing them, as you could
Creative
say.
directing them, yep.
Okay. So as a kid, you just did mainly just sort of like drawing
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. How about sort of when you were in more like high school, a little bit older?
Yeah. So in high school too, I would draw. I would draw on the tables. I would draw on my arms. I would always be drawing. And there's another local person in the scene, Akayla Bird,
Shout out,
actually.
Akayla.
Hi, Akayla. And when we reconnected again in our adulthood, we were like, do you remember we'd literally be in science class and we'd be drawing on the tables? And that sums us up.
Okay.
And then in college, it was still drawing, but it was more specific, and I would draw flowers.
Okay.
Because to me, florals are sort of like an anthropological view on people's stories. Like it's an ethnography, and that's how I chose to view flowers. And so I'd ask people what their favorite flowers were, because usually it would bring out memories from their childhood or of their grandparents, or even the smells associated with them. Like it's not just about the flower, it's everything that comes with this flower, all of everything that comes in the mind. And so I felt like it was my way of documenting the people around me is through these florals. And that kind of led me to photography. I've always liked photography, and I was the kid who, at that time, it was film cameras, and so I would fill up the film rolls as much as possible. It wasn't even me taking photos of anything specifically. I just liked the act of taking photos.
Okay. Like loading in the film,
Yeah.
getting the getting the whole process of it. Did you develop them
Just
too?
filling it up.
Okay.
Literally. Just doesn't matter what it was, my cats, the floor.
Okay.
Nonsense things, but it was just so fun. Literally just
It is a very satisfying click
it's
as well.
so satisfying. And then when the Digicam started coming out, love that. And I love that you could like see what you're taking photos of. And during like family parties, one of my uncles, he would buy all of the latest things. And I'd always be like, can I use your camera? Can I use it while we're at the party? And so, or I would steal cameras while we're at like family parties just so I could use them.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad would always be walking around with like a little camcorder or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, um, in college, I think is when I kind of like started taking photos more,
Okay.
because I finally got my first camera of my
Okay.
own, and it was something that I would ask for every single Christmas, and would never get a camera. And that's all I wanted. That's all I asked for. And then finally, my first year of college, my uncle gifted me my first camera.
Aw.
Yeah, it was so sweet. And I learned how to take photos from there. And like, I started taking photos of my teammates, of people who I went to school with who were like aspiring models. And I just found it so much more satisfying than drawing because it was something that I could share with others. And I
Okay.
like really, really enjoy being surrounded by others, but also creating with others. And like to have people's inputs and to have their creativity come in and like make something
Yeah.
together. Loved it.
Oh, that is true because photography is something where you have to it isn't just sort of you and your creative vision. You have the model if you're working with the model, whoever's doing makeup, set design. It's a whole sort of it's a group project essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a group
It's a
project,
group project.
but where everyone participates.
Yes. It,
Because everyone's passionate about
yeah.
what they're doing. And so I feel like everyone's really, really on it, which just makes, I don't know, it just makes for a really good set, really good vibes. And I enjoy showing up and taking
Oh,
photos.
that is very sweet. When you were in college, did you go for art as well, or were you doing?
No, actually,
Oh.
um, I've never been properly trained for art or anything. I've taken like an art class in high school,
Okay.
but the way it was treated in high school was it was just like a class to kind of hang out. We
Right. It
didn't
was just
really,
like an elective, just sort of almost a
yeah,
free period.
yeah, which I wish it were more because I really, really was interested in it. And so I went to school for anthropology.
Oh, okay. So you did okay.
I did.
What is anthropology for the folks that might not know, like me?
Um, Anthropology, it's a very, very broad, um, I don't know, like, it's not
Major.
major. Yes. I was like, elective? No. It's a very broad major. And so there's 4 subcategories that you could go in. I specifically was studying cultural anthropology. The way I got into that is like, at that age, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. And also, I'm very much a person of like, I want to do everything. Like,
Mhm.
I just want to see what I can do. I love
Right.
being put into new positions and like just figuring it out. And also, how am I going to be restrained to just one like
Topic.
thing
Hmm.
for the rest of my life? Like, I couldn't fathom that. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, I know that the lifestyle that I want to live when I'm older is I want to travel.
Hmm.
And at that point of time, my only reference for like anthropology was National Geographic, and that's something that I really enjoyed watching. But like,
Okay.
I was like, they travel to do that. I'm gonna go. If it's gonna get me to different countries,
I'll do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Did it? No, but I love traveling, and I still do it.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
I think because anthropology is a study of human.
Oh, yes, sorry. So, anthropology is just the study of humans, it's the study of cultures, it's a study of, it's at its very basic, it's a study of patterns.
Okay.
And so, like, although I don't study or practice anthropology in a sense of like, here's my paper, I have this title,
Hmm.
it's applied so much to art making. And I feel like art making is a form of anthropology and a form of ethnography. Like, all art
Okay.
makers are anthropologists to me.
Please explain more.
Because it's pattern recognition, right? And so it's taking something that you're seeing and you're creating your version or how you want to interpret that so others can actually have language for what you're visualizing and the patterns that you're recognizing. And I feel like that's very much art, whether
Yeah.
it's even for the patterns that you recognize in yourself. And like I say, maybe for you, like more of like the emotions that you feel inside, like you're recognizing those patterns and you're taking them in and you're making them
You're like synthesizing
legible for
them.
others. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No, I see that 100%. And that's why I'm always like intrigued when other folks like, because I'm like, you don't have to have like, you don't have to go to art school. Because I think wherever you go, like you carry that into your practice. And so to hear you sort of and I had sort of an idea when you were talking about anthropology. I was like, oh, I can see how this sort of goes into your art practice because it is exactly what you're saying. You're sort of bringing in all of these sort of recognizing different things and trying to like piece them together in a way that sort of like makes sort of sense or like recontextualizes it
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
And especially because you were so then when you were in there, you were doing flower studies of folks or like what did you call them?
Oh, in college, I
Yes.
was grinding. Yes.
Okay.
So I was every day I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and I'd draw for like an hour or two. I'd try to get one floral in a day and then either go to school or go to work, go to practice
Practice.
because I was in cross country and track when I was in
Oh,
college.
okay.
And then on top of school, work, and practice, I had work. I literally
Right.
and I had two jobs. So like I was grinding and I'd take photos. Like and I still feel like I kind of live the same
I was like,
lifestyle
you're
today.
kind of still doing that today.
Honestly. But it's more of like now I know exactly what I want to be doing during the
Okay.
day. So it's a little bit more fulfilling.
You have a little more control over it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I would love to hear more about the flowers. Sort of like, what did you gather when you were doing that with folks? Because that seems like such a very sweet thing to, yeah, to do for folks.
Mm. Um, Flowers, one of my favorite stories, and I probably will butcher it a little because it's been what, like years.
Okay,
I feel
it's
old.
fine.
But I was backpacking around Europe and I met this person in Amsterdam
Okay.
and they were from Slovakia. And I asked them what their favorite flower was because they were showing me around. And at that point in time, I was like, if someone hosts me or shows me around and something like, I'm going to make them a flower and that's how I'm going to gift something of just like that
Right.
exchange, you know? And they had told me this, I think it's called Edelweiss.
Okay.
Edelweiss is the flower. But it reminded them of growing up in Slovakia, and it was a time period where women still could not wear denim.
Oh.
And so, like, it's contextualized.
Uh-huh.
I was like, wait, tell me more. What do you mean they
Yeah.
couldn't? And because of what was going on politically, women couldn't wear denim. And he remembered his grandma, like, kind of having this want to.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always run away to this faraway field. I want to say it was like a 30-minute run away for a child,
Okay.
But
He had to go far.
in this context, like, that's just something like children around this area did, like that's not.
Okay.
And there's this field, and he stumbled upon it one day, and it was filled with these flowers that he like loved so much. Oh, yarrow, that's
Oh,
it,
yarrow.
yarrow.
Okay.
And so it was filled with yarrow, and he like laid in it, and I that was like the point in time where he really imagined his grandma to be able to live the life that like she wanted.
Aw.
And so that's why it's like his favorite flower now, and that it brings him so much joy because he just wanted that for his grandma. And at that age, like having that thought sitting in that magical field and just like wanting everything for your family.
Such a like pure thought.
Mm-hmm.
Aw.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to get real personal with a lot of these folks then.
Yeah, yeah.
Aw.
And it like, I mean, it brought back memories for people. I learned history with it, and especially just like encountering different people from like different countries as well. Like, I learned so much just from them, and I feel like you learn even more from personal stories while
Yeah.
traveling about different countries, and so I really, really enjoyed it.
Aw. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Something that I've been finding more and more interesting is just sort of the care you have with a lot of folks,
Mm,
and sort of like when you're, as sort of like you're saying this, like there's sort of a lot of vulnerability between you and sort of the subjects or whoever you choose to collaborate with. And I'm sort of thinking also about like the anthropology, like, and sort of the idea of like when you're studying all of these things that you have to be sort of mindful and careful. And I'm like, how do you go about that? Like, how do you handle sort of like if somebody, yeah, tells you something very vulnerable? Like, how do you?
mm. Um, like for my artwork specifically.
Hmm. Your art
Um,
making
my
practice.
art making practice, I think my art making practice specifically, it's not about any one specific person. It's more of like a mesh of, but it's mainly me.
Okay.
And it's mainly my experiences, but my experience as a child.
Okay.
And growing up and having like an idealized version of a childhood, but also honoring everyone around me.
Hmm.
And so, although they're not direct conversations that I have with people that inform like all of this artwork, it's still years and years of memories.
Hmm.
And so, I don't think I necessarily have conversations where I would have to like
Okay.
hide people's identities,
Hmm.
but it does inform.
Okay.
I don't
Slay.
know if I.
No, it does. And so then when you were in college doing all of this and you went for anthropology, was there ever a switch in which you were like, doing art instead in the middle of it? Or was it sort of like after graduating? Because you said you were doing photography during it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How was, when did you sort of make that transition
To like art
to art?
was like almost a year ago now.
Okay, so you graduated from there, you got your degree in anthropology,
Hmm.
and then afterwards, where did you go to work afterwards?
Um, I traveled for a year.
Okay. Okay, so you were just like,
I was
okay,
again like life's goal is always to travel.
okay.
So I traveled for a year. I was backpacking for a few months, and then I would go to different states for a few months, and I was just living life.
Whoa,
This is
okay.
why I was also working so much because I wanted to save up enough money to
Uh-huh.
do this. Like I knew that that's something that I wanted to do. And wasn't until, yeah, so what is it? What did I do for work in between that? Then the pandemic happened.
Oh, okay.
So I graduated, what is it, 2019? So almost
Okay, so
exactly a
right
year
before, yeah.
for the pandemic. And so that happened. And then few months into the pandemic, I ended up working for a nonprofit in the arts.
Hmm.
And I created and started the first artist in residency studio in San Bernardino.
Slay, okay.
Yeah.
Here, wait, before we do though, you have a little smudge. So I'm like,
Mhm.
we're gonna tell you that before we continue. There we go.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So yeah, congrats on that, on
Thanks.
the Studio Ida, correct?
Yes, the studio I did.
Yes. And I believe that is where I met you.
Yes,
Yes.
Emma's workshop.
Yeah, Emma's
Hmm.
workshop. How did this sort of yeah, come about of making like an in-house artist residency?
Yeah, I mean, I think
If you
this is
feel comfortable
where,
sharing.
yeah. I think this is where like anthropological background, but also maybe going back to your question of like information gathering from
Okay.
folks, in terms of like I enjoy having conversations with people, and so I really, really listen to what they have to say, and I feel like it's a form of surveying. It's just having conversations. And a gap that I found in the IE specifically is just people didn't have space. As simple as that. People didn't have space. And on top of that, space that honored non-traditional arts.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of non-traditional artists here, but I found that it's not really accessible to see a lot of those artists because a lot of that is from like these bigger majoring cities, right? And travel. Like, not a lot of people have the funds to be able to go to these cities to see that art, see a different side of art, experience it. And I really wanted to create a space where people didn't have to drive out to feel like they could do that artwork and that they felt like they could do that artwork here in the city and that they were supported in doing that, and like also have the option if you wanted to be an artist, a full-on working artist, like that's so possible in the IE.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, here it's a little bit more of like survival mode, and it doesn't have to be. I think, and I believe that like artists here can full on be artists, like as a full-time job. And I don't think that was one of the options that I was given as someone going to school, that you could be an artist, but so valuable. It's so possible. And that's kind of like what I wanted to do through the studio, is have a space where people can really like showcase that they could do the art that they believe that they could do, and to mentor folks to the goals that they want to do. And so it's very much curated to meet artists where they were at. And that was a tagline, meeting artists where they're at, because every single month, so people had access to a studio space for a month, and then it went to 2 months. And they also got funding for whatever project that they wanted to do, and they could work on whatever project, but it was something that would like go towards their goals and dreams. And I would be that middle person, and I would help them, whether it was with like social media, more hands-on, more back-end, just thinking through concepts, ideas. I love like riffing off of people and like giving ideas.
Yeah.
I'm
I
an
love
idea
chatting with you
generator.
about that. It's so good.
So if you ever need any ideas, just come talk with me. I will spit them out. But yeah, I was middle person, because again, I want the artists to do whatever they want to do, and which is why like the programming was purposely so flexible, and the criteria was very little, because I wanted them just to show up as themselves and show up with the understanding of the context of like, we live in a space where people probably have to work 2 to 3 jobs and then still want to do art on the side and maybe take the bus. And so I wanted to really, really have a space that was accommodating of the space in which we live, the city in which we live, and how people actually go about their days. And we would create programming that was like, either it didn't extenuate or put so much more pressure on them to create, and they would give 100%, even if it was just for like a few days or weeks. They didn't have to be creating the entire time that they were there. But yeah, that was informed by all of the conversations that I had just by being in community with people and showing up to events and talking about artists' needs and wants. And that is kind of where it came from, is a community.
Yeah, just like chatting with folks, seeing what was needed. And I think that that is something that is still very much needed, much more. Like, I think that having just more opportunities like that for artists, and I'm just so glad that you're able to provide that for folks. That's such a like beautiful thing to be able to help foster community and help uplift artists who maybe might have not had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it was so cool. All of the artwork that came out of that,
Yeah.
but also seeing where all of the artists are now. And then also having all of like the people who attended the events, like you attended one of the events, and it was so cool. And to have access to one of those events and to
Yeah.
be able to like bring your family, your kids, and have them see all of that art, like so fun.
Priceless.
And there's a lot of the past artists and residences in Desde Los Cielos as well. So it's really
Yeah.
full circle moments.
You helped get them like their first steps even sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm so like, you're someone who's just like so loving and so caring, and you really do just want like the best for folks.
Thanks. I try.
Well, you're doing lovely. You're doing amazing. How has that been beneficial for you in sort of your art making practice?
Really beneficial. Because I had the privilege of talking to these artists one-on-one, right?
Right.
And learning about their art process, seeing how they situated things in their studio space. Like, that's where I learned a majority of my skills. Like, I know I was sharing a lot of skills, but I was truly the one that was learning there. Like, I learned so much through all of these artists, as well as just like events that I've attended and like places that I've gone and just travels. But really, really having that one-on-one time with artists allowed me to see their thought processes and how they contextualize things. And I kind of like, I'm like a mirror or like a quilt of all of the artists and people that I have come across. And I very much like incorporate their sayings, thoughts, processes. And maybe this is still going back to the question. But yeah, into all of the artwork that I do. So,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
I'm a sum of people.
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's such a like, it seems like you essentially had like a rotating list of like almost mentors that you were like learning from.
Yeah, I was a mentor, but
Like,
actually, they were mentoring me.
right. Exactly. That's so cool. Like, because I think that's one of the like the lovely things of art and doing stuff like this is like as you help other folks, you're helping them, but they're also helping you.
Yeah,
And
it's a
you're-
knowledge exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, which is one of my favorite parts of the studio is that not only did I get to experience that, but like artists would come back and they would share that knowledge with the current artist or just random artists from the community would come and be like, hey, I saw that you're doing this or that you have your skill. And that current artist would be like, yeah, I'll teach you how to do it right now. Like,
Come on in.
yeah, but then they'd have these conversations and they would both be able to better their practices just by being in the same space together. So it was sweet. Yeah.
I love that. And so then you said you started doing art more serious full time like around 2 years ago. So that was around when you
Around
started.
last year.
Around last year.
Like around this time. My first, one of my first shows was The Deep Cut, curated by
Oh,
Mariah here in
Oh,
Riverside. Yeah.
Well, explain us a little more about that show and sort of how that came about. Because that was the show you did with the horse and the. Okay.
And so that was a year ago. Mariah had asked me to be in that show, and I remember us
Shout out Mariah.
Shout out Mariah. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know, you're okay. I remember having this like train of thought because again, I'm like really involved in the community and was helping all of these artists put together their dreams and visions, and I was like, wait, why am I not in any of these shows?
Oh.
Like,
wait, prior to that, you hadn't been in shows? Okay.
and I was just like, why don't people ask me to be in these shows? And
Aw.
I was like, it's like I keep showing up and like I'm just not, I'm involved, but I'm not part of. And I was like, why is that? And I like started getting a little sad over it, but then one day it hit me, and I was just like, no one knows that I make art.
Oh. Okay.
No one knows.
Really?
And so,
So then so you were helping other artists, but you weren't sharing your art then?
yeah.
Oh.
I was
Okay.
photographing people, but like more tangible, like hands-on art, I wasn't
Okay.
I knew that I knew how to do it and that I wanted to do it and that I was so capable of it. But did anyone else realize that? No, I just realized that I had never actually voiced it or like done it.
Okay.
And Mariah was one of the first people to like ask me to be part of the show. And I feel like we had kind of like, it's almost like a similar conversation. And then this is how like the show came about. And so I'm really grateful for her space and like them asking me to be part of it, because I think it was the first time I was able to show people that I wasn't just a photographer and everything that I knew about myself, and that I was like so much more. And so I did this piece and it was titled Vamos al Licor, and it was based off of like me and my grandpa and that memory of going to the liquor store on our horse, and he would be in the back and I would like sit in the front holding like the, what is it, that part of the,
Reins? Or no?
that like circular part on the saddle. I don't know the name, but like I remember the texture of it. I remember the movement of the horse and the swaying, and like it's such a sweet memory. And I would go with my grandpa to this liquor store, and for context, I grew up in Muscoy. And so Muscoy is the unincorporated area of San Bernardino. And that means that horses, cars still to this day share the roadway. And that also means the landscape is fitted for both horses and cars. And so liquor stores have this like
The bar?
the bar. I'm gonna call it a bar for sake of better word, or no, for lack of better word.
It's like where you park your bike, but except it's where you park your horse.
Where you park your horse, where you tie your horse up. And we would tie our horse up. We'd go inside. I'd get sour candy. I love sour candy. Specifically, the one that like comes in a rectangular box. There's sour strips, and then you have your little tongue and you pick as many as you want, and it'll go into a plastic bag, and you would pay only $1 max. Like,
Oh,
for
and
this.
yeah.
Yeah, they don't have that there anymore, and so I don't go anymore because of that. But I would get that, and my grandpa would get his liquor, and we would go back home. Like,
Yeah.
that is a memory that
A core memory.
a core memory of reoccurring thing in my childhood.
Oh.
And so not only did I really want to honor the landscape because I feel like it's so unique, and because I started seeing like the effects of the logistics industry slowly creeping its way into not only San Bernardino but Muscoy. And because of that, I was like, no, like I want to showcase like how great of a space this is, and how cool that
Yeah.
people can be on their horses and go around to their friends' houses and also to the liquor store and like have these memories with their family members, and like it's just such a unique space. And so yeah, I wanted to honor that.
You wanted to like sort of honor it and document it and
Document
sort of
it. Yeah,
yeah.
very much document it. And it was an Easter egg because remember at this time
And you're
I was
planning
like,
regalo.
yes. And I mean, I knew that no one knew what I could do.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a horse. Because not only did we go by horse, but I know that I want to do a show based off of horses.
Okay. So you're already laying this little like
Yeah, I had to give some sort of context to the setting that they would be stepping into in the show.
This is like your, what do they call it, like in music, like almost like a single or like a teaser.
Oh my gosh, a single. That was my single.
That was your single.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Was it daunting sort of going into this being sort of your first being I guess art in the sense of it being what's the proper I don't know I remember in college they called it the discourse, in which sort of like you might have a piece but like suddenly putting it in a white gallery wall changes the context and it is now seen as fine art. And because you were saying that like you had been making work before but you had never sort of I guess been displaying it as sort of that
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like putting it up on that wall, was it daunting sort of going from maybe having it sort of be something that only you knew to it suddenly being like on display and sort of being more like officiated as
Yeah.
art?
I mean, I didn't know because again, this is my first time actually making anything hands-on. I knew I could
Oh,
do it
okay.
mentally.
Wait, you had never like even like printed work either, or
I mean, so when I was drawing flowers, I would like Dwan Callum of Schoolboys actually, he would help me screen print and he even taught me how to screen print.
okay,
And so I'd make posters with him,
okay,
but that's to the extent of like actual physical hard copies of
okay,
what I would do. And also I would print on seeded paper so that way I like the idea of like things, knowing things will deteriorate over
yeah,
time or like they're not going to be there
yeah,
forever. And so I would do it on my artwork on seeded paper. So that way
mm,
people had the option of planting it and never seeing it again.
okay,
But yeah, that's the extent of,
okay. So that was more of just like a one-on-one just for that person, and then like that was kind of it, right?
yeah. And so like install came about because I feel like
Really?
people were asking, like, then I started being asked to do shows,
Uh-huh.
but I would be asked as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I'm an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so that was really the first time that I was able to showcase like a photo, but also in a way that was non-traditional
Yeah.
in the sense of like I created a scale and depth and almost I like putting people in places
Yeah.
and really transporting them. And yeah, it's like a fun little ethnographic, like you get to like almost take a field trip to this space, right?
Yeah.
And so what I was worried about for this piece specifically was like if it would translate being on a
Mm.
wall or if people would understand. And I was also just really nervous because it was my first time. And I was like, there's a lot of photographers in the show's photo show, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what everyone else is doing and like how like non-traditional it is compared to everyone else. And I was worried that like it wouldn't mesh with everyone else because from my understanding up until this point, people would showcase framed
Yeah.
photos, right? And so I was like, I don't know. Like, I really hope that what I'm doing, like, people receive it well and, like, understand the context and, like, enjoy it. Like, that's all I can hope for. But people really enjoyed it and they resonated with it and they were really happy to see that space be honored. And a lot of people were like, I come from like I grew up in a space like that. Like that's
Yeah.
so cool. And there were even people who like just happened to be walking around that night and they were from Mexico and they're like, wait, this feels like home, you
Aw.
know? And that's kind of what Muscoy is. It's a sliver of Mexico, right? And so it just felt nice that people from different countries, different spaces could really feel connected to a piece of like a photo of a horse.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful piece of just, yeah, you really did feel transported when you were there. And I think a lot of your work has that sort of, yeah, of like world building.
Mm.
And you allow us to enter into this world.
Hmm.
I'm very happy to have witnessed that one as well. I think that was, yeah, my first time as well seeing your work.
Mm.
Which is so funny. That was also the first time that you even showed. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of world building, I would like to talk to you about the work that you now have at the Cheech called
Yes.
Madre.
Hmm.
I'm gonna read the statement that you have. So, Madre, produced in 2024. So it goes, the Virgin de Guadalupe, because of the way it has been imposed, has has had to be reappropriated and reconstructed to make it legible to brown bodies, in this case, queer bodies. Much like a drag mother, she both refies and defies motherhood. Guides, blesses, protects, feels like home, is supernatural, is revered, is ornately framed on walls, and gets every knee to bow. Madre is dedicated to the mothers of chosen families who support their children like their own, provide a space to exist safely and express oneself. A selfless blessing that is liberating for those who experience it and can be felt for generations. Sorry, I
Yeah.
have a really hard time reading. But That is a beautiful piece that you have in there, inspired by the Virgin of Guadalupe and sort
Mm-hmm.
of the meshing of that and drag mothers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little more about that? How did that come about? Because I know when were first talking about it, it was slightly different to what
Mm.
it became now. Because I remember you were gonna have really long like trenzas. Do you
Yeah.
remember
Do
that?
I even give that away? Because I still want to do. I'm gonna give it away.
Okay.
Someone could take this idea if they want. Um,
Well, at least we have it documented that you said it here first.
um, but yeah, this idea kind of came through talking with Emmanuel, which is your co-curator for the show.
Yes.
And it was around the time that they were doing their artist in residency, and we would have these conversations of just celestial beings, but also the fact that I wanted to do something based on the Virgen.
Mm-hmm.
And they are really knowledgeable in the Virgen and just how she connects to the above world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really learned a lot through them, and like that, it had me going. It had me going. And so my original idea was actually to do a photo of the Virgen and have these like very dramatic lights as if she was on stage. So very much performer, black background actually. So she would have been not as vibrant. But the main component was I wanted her hair to get fake hair, put it on the actual photo,
Mm-hmm.
and have it go all the way to the ground in some. So that way people can actually see the length of the
Yeah.
hair. Because that's something that we don't see in the
Yeah. Her
Virgen.
hair is like tucked
And
away.
it's tucked away. And I just thought it would be fun to kind of like think of what's underneath. What does
Yeah.
she wear? You know, like what does
Yeah.
she wear? But also, what does her hair look like?
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that, because I used to have really, really long hairs, so I love the idea of playing with hair. And I was going to do that. And then through more and more conversation, I was like, no, I want to do an actual like install
Mm-hmm.
because this is something that like I've been wanting to do more of. And like you said, world building. And I was like, I don't think this is world building enough.
Okay.
And so I still took the idea of Virgen being on
Mm-hmm.
the stage, as in a drag mother being on the stage, and I gave her her actual stage.
Yeah.
Like, you could very much, she's on her stage, on her podium now, and she's much more vibrant. And I got that color palette specifically from, I have a really huge painting that I got from a local artist of the Virgen de Guadalupe, and she's brown. And I
Okay.
love that imagery. And it's very digestible and like yeah, I love her. And what I think is so unique from her, aside from her skin color, is that she has glitter. She's hot pink,
Ooh.
she's green, she's yellow. Like I was wanting this piece for over a year and I finally got her. And I think just like that time period, I was like, no, I'm gonna do something based off of her because I really love her. And the
Mm-hmm.
artist like depicted her so well. And she was just like nothing I've ever seen before. And so I really, really wanted to honor that artist for giving me that piece, that huge piece, and letting me have it because I love her so much. And yeah, that was very much like what inspired the new way of how I wanted to depict the Virgen. And where were we going? Sorry, what
I
did you
was just
say?
like asking more about the work and sort of like how it came to be. Because I think that is a very interesting connection of sort of the Virgen de Guadalupe, but you're thinking of like drag mother.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, drag mother and the Virgen and the connection with that specifically, I think about chosen family a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my previous piece at the Cheech was about chosen family and
Yeah.
spending time with people at a table, but this is like I wanted to do a different experience that still lent itself to that. And I feel like in a lot of queer experiences, they find that chosen family or that the people that see them through spaces like drag performances and drag mothers, where they take them in, they care for them, they see them, they like see her and revere her. Is that the proper word? That's that one. But like she's just like even a gaudy figure, you know, like
They look up to her.
they look up to her. She's dressed like ornately, and all of the parallels, like I started seeing them and I was like, wait, they're kind of like the same, you know? And they're almost like extraterrestrial in the sense of like the Virgin just kind of appeared.
Yeah.
You know?
Literally just like
Literally
from the heavens.
just appeared.
Yeah.
And drag mother is usually just seen as like more of an outcasted community member, right?
Yeah.
But this is like what makes the community is being not part of the majority community, right? And I feel like I have had the privilege of being taken in and being seen and just being uplifted by friends, and I really wanted to honor them specifically through this piece. I know. And yeah, I am just really appreciative of the people in my life who have allowed me to really, really be able to express myself. And it's otherworldly in itself to be able to see people. And
You make me cry. I can't look at you.
I know, I'm going to cry right now, and I don't want to. I'm like losing my words.
Not look at you.
Trying
I will
to. All right. That's
Okay,
coming.
It's coming, and I'm like, because it is such a, oh my god, it's such a like heartwarming piece, and like it's so, even though it's talking about such sort of like heavy subjects, it's still at the end of the day is so full of life and joy and fun, and there's like, I love how sort of like campy in it, sort of, I don't know, like.
Yeah.
You see it in like the way that it sparkles, like it just makes you.
Homie, I'm wearing bad clothes.
Got you. Aww.
Thanks.
Got you.
Thanks.
Sorry to get so so deep into it.
Sorry for not talking more.
No, you're good. I'm like as you can go as far as you want. You know. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you got to honor them and that they're in this sort of space and institution and sort of like brought into this space and being like, no, we are worthy of this as well, you know, like we are of the same caliber as everyone.
Yeah.
And for this, how were you at any point afraid or sort of hesitant to yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because you're working with such a, I guess, like a sacred image for a lot of Chicano and Mexican folks. But I remember when we were first talking about this, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Yolanda Lopez, the Walking Virgen. And I was wondering, like, when you were doing this, were you afraid of this? Like, did you look to people like her for like inspiration of being like, it'll be okay? Or was this sort of something that you were like, even if I get a lot of hate, like, I'm still gonna do it?
Yeah. I think I wasn't nervous up until we started having these conversations.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I put this in your head.
No, it's okay.
Oh.
No, but I think that this also allowed me to prepare for that possibility.
Okay.
And I was nervous because after our conversation, I had started like just doing more research on Yolanda and the women who had depicted or altered the Virgen's image in any way, shape, or form. And like they got blacklisted. They received so much hate. And that wasn't long ago at all. Like, not long ago at all. And so that started making me a little nervous only because I was going to be mixing religion and queerness.
Yeah.
And I just I watched YouTube videos on them and I had conversations with people, and the one person that really really like helped me kind of not feel as nervous about it was Kenya Sophia.
Shout out
And
Kenya.
yeah, shout out Kenya. And her work, her research is specifically on mothers and mothering in the Latino community. And she really helped me, like, she contextualized the Virgen and how it's always been altered. Like, the image has always been altered so that way it's legible to who's reading it.
Okay.
And that's kind of like why I start with that in my statement, right? And that's what made me less nervous, because I was like, no, I'm not doing it for like the majority of public. I'm doing it for the people who will understand.
Yeah.
And those people deserve to be seen, and like I want them to be seen, and I want them to see themselves in this, but also like honor all of the lives that like I'm sure have seen other people, and they deserve to be seen and put on a pedestal. And like that's what made me not scared.
Okay.
Was talking to her all the time, voice memos, but also just like, no, like my people deserve to be seen.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, at the end of the
Period.
day, no matter what happens, like I know that I've built up a community and that they'll be behind me, and just like knowing that, I was like, it'll be good no matter what.
Yeah.
And like something that really, really was kind of heartwarming is being in the same space as the Yolanda. And
At the same time.
At the same time, her stuff is upstairs. And when I found out that her work was going to be upstairs, I was like, no better way. Our stuff will be in conversation with one another.
Yeah.
And people like going through the museum. And on the opening night, Angelica, which is one of the curators for her show, came up to me and was just like, Yolanda would have loved seeing this. And at that point, I was like, yep. It's not open to the public yet, but yep.
Yep.
That's all the affirmation I needed. And yeah, I am really appreciative of her for even coming up to me and just sharing those words with me. It was really sweet.
Oh, I'm so glad you went with it. I remember you were a little bit hesitant because you were afraid that nobody would want to model or sort of like put themselves in that position of being the Virgen, right?
Yes,
You were
yeah.
having a bit of a
Yeah.
trouble with that.
That was another thing because, because I'm putting in the context of which what it's in. It's like, how do I? Because I had different iterations even for this photo. First, it was like I was gonna do a man actually, and have him in underwear
Okay.
and all oiled up and like,
Oh.
like I had different iterations of how I wanted her to look, and I was gonna do that, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, no, if let's say the public doesn't like this image and doesn't receive it well, like I want to protect whoever's identity is that's really at the forefront, because it's not going to be me, it's going to be them at the end of the day. And that's why I kind of decided to go with the color.
The skin tone?
Yeah, to add color.
Okay.
And to dress her up in a different sort of way. It's more drag-esque. It's more, it's with adornments and to show less skin, because I really, really wanted them to be almost of a character as opposed to putting a model's face up. Yeah.
I think that was what's it called? I can see that being like a very smart move on your end to like protect the folks. And I think that, again, it goes back to sort of you being very caring and always looking out for folks. Because, I guess at the end of the day, it would be whoever's image is on there who would get sort of more of the backlash.
Yeah. And I wanted to be the one to take that if it did happen. You know, like,
You didn't want to put the blame on them. Okay, so that's sort of how the blue came about, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
and also it just tied to the celestial theme.
Yeah.
And I also got inspiration from like Juno Birch and stuff like that. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, amazing alien drag queen.
Yeah.
Like she's an alien. And I was like, I'm gonna
I
take her
see
color.
that.
Like
Yeah.
I've seen her in person and she's fantastic.
Is she that vibrant?
Yes, her skin so smooth. I don't understand. It's not Photoshop. It's not
Really? She's
Photoshop.
just that smooth.
She's just that smooth. Her makeup is that pristine. I don't understand how she does it. Like, if I could ever get to that level, oh, but yeah, it's because she's an alien. She's otherworldly. Yeah.
It's a very cool little like connection and reference because yeah, when we were putting it together, we thought it was cool. One that you and Jesse are both did a Virgen in very similar colors, and when we were putting it together, we thought it was interesting, sort of like how they're both like different parallels, and they both each side ends with a Virgen.
Yeah.
And sort of when we were displaying it, also, the left side was sort of like the celestial, the like alien, the outer world. And then the right side was more of like of the earths. And then yours sort of was the alien. So it was kind of like a going back down to earth. And in yours, since it was alien, it was like going back up to the heavens in order to make that little transition. I really loved the like yeah, the playing of the alien and like the drag, all of the references, very good.
Thanks.
Oh my God. Okay. Um, with this moving forward, what are you hoping to do with your art, your career? Because this is such a powerful piece, and would you like to explore that and continue to do the different iterations? Because you had multiple different ideas. Like, would you still want to eventually go back to them and work on them, or are you like, no, I want to do something else moving forward?
No, she's done.
Okay, that's like
I feel like,
you said what you needed to say.
yeah.
Okay.
And maybe like I will for sure use some of like the materials, as in like the hair. I think I'll work with hair one day because that's a really big subject
yeah.
that is on its own. But I'll use the materials. I won't necessarily do her again.
Okay.
And like, you know, kind of like Regalo, for instance. I did a horse. I didn't show a horse, but it was horse theme. And then I have the cross. I wanted to do something a little bit more like religious, family table. Put the Virgen on the family table and now onto the Virgen. And so you might already know what's next.
You already put like your little, what's it called, Easter eggs in this one.
Yeah.
Do I know what it is?
No.
Could you tell me?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Well, okay. So, I mean, not necessarily with the Virgen specifically, but what I do intend to do throughout my work is really explore my upbringing and archiving and doing more ethnographic work within Muscoy.
Okay.
And just where I grew up and reconnecting with people there. But yeah, especially just because like a lot of my family members are getting old, which I feel like a lot of the traditions are not looking the same. And I really want to do things that will preserve and honor the people in these spaces. Like Muscoy is a lot of undocumented folks, a lot of people who immigrated from Mexico. And so the lifestyle is very heavily brought from Mexico. And I don't want to lose that. And my hope is that people see how great of a space and community it is, and hopefully that'll account for something with all of the warehousing creeping in. Yeah, because it is coming in, and I really want to showcase it in a way that's legible to majority of the public, and hopefully that sways some minds on the impact of the impact they're having on the community. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, art is very powerful, and even if something unfortunately happens, like you'll have at least the documentation, and you'll be able to live on through your art and through your work, you know?
Yeah.
I think art has that power to do that.
Yeah, and it's important to start the documentation now as opposed to when it's not here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, let's get everyone now.
Archiving and making, it goes back to the your anthropology.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going back to that of like making some sort of the studying of something and making it be known and showcased and documented.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I was going to say about that is the piece that you have at the museum is I'm so glad that you did that because now in the future, if somebody else wants to also do something similar of the Virgin, they can also look at you
Yeah.
for power, look at us for inspiration and be like, well, if Yulissa could do that, I could do it too.
Yeah. And I hope that, I mean, the good press that it's receiving too will also help others be
Yeah.
able to do it. Because when I was doing my research and like queerness again with the Virgin, I just saw one article from a person who did drag in dress as the Virgin, and they received so much backlash for it. And so I really hope that it inspires people to take on their own iterations and yeah.
Yeah. Add to
Add to the conversation.
add to the conversation,
Yeah.
add to that and be again something that years later people can reference and look back on, sort of like how you did with Yolanda and like somebody will look back at with you.
Mm-hmm.
One day you'll be somebody going up to, being like, I love this.
I hope so.
And that's one of the, like the most like beautiful things is like when you sort of see the almost like I don't know, like it almost seems like a passing of the baton.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like keeping that conversation going, seeing how much farther you can push it. Wow. I'm like so excited for what you're, I don't know, you have just like so many cool things that like we haven't even got to talk at all about like your fashion or about like anything like that. Like you just have so many different aspects that like we could go hours and hours. But
I mean, you can if y'all want a part two. No, just kidding.
part
But
two,
actually, yeah.
I would love to continue this with you and chat more just because I would love to hear more. But like, I'm so intrigued by the um, anthropological aspect of your work and the documentation of it and the like queerification of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that when I think of anthropology, I think of like kind of like Indiana Jones, sort of like people who like
Yes.
do stuff
It's
like
very
that.
white.
Yes, it's very white.
And it's white people observing black and brown bodies,
Yes.
which let's change the narrative on that.
Right. And it's oftentimes like grave robbing,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like oftentimes what I struggle with a lot of them is they sort of put their own narrative of what's happening. And oftentimes when they display or talk about it, it almost feels like they kill it.
Mm.
Like I think that's one of the things with a lot of that is they sort of stop it and it doesn't feel alive anymore, even though it's already dead or already passed or something. Like they display it or sort of talk about it in a way that sort of like holds it and freezes it and doesn't allow it to continue.
Yeah.
Versus your work, there's some sort of like liveliness of it that allows the work to, even if it may have already passed, and even if something were to already pass, like I can still see the life and the continuation of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think that's what's also different is that a lot of, I'm going to say more of like Nat Geo or like what we would think of as anthropology, like growing up, it was done from people not in those communities already.
Right.
And so it's very much just archiving my own spaces, but like bringing it to who we are now, not just like in the past. It's touching on all of these different timelines that almost makes it timeless.
Yeah. Because you're combining the past with the present and even parts of the future. And so I'm like, because I'm thinking about like Regalo and how even though that was such a past thing, there was something about it that felt so alive and of now, even though it was something that happened like decades ago. So yeah, I don't know, I'm like intrigued to see how you'll be doing this with your moving forward as you continue to document and archive and survey your, where you're growing up and the changes that are happening.
Yeah.
You're keeping it alive.
Oh my gosh, that's big. That's big.
Yeah. I mean, is that not that's what you're doing?
Yeah.
You're keeping it alive. You're creating life and you're
I mean,
sustaining it.
alongside everyone else who's in that community, I'm just doing it in my own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone who wakes up every day there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that is all the time for today. Let the folks know.
Dang,
I
you're not even gonna
know.
touch on my outfits?
Do you want to talk about it? I mean, we're already at like the hour mark.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
would you just very briefly
Ask me a
chat about your
question.
fashion? When do you have a piece of clothing or a piece of sort of garment that the first time you, I'm trying to think of like the first time you put some garment on and you were like, oh, I feel something.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think it goes back to exactly who I'm referencing for Madre.
Really?
Because she is a stylist and also just has a lot of clothes and she has a really fun style. And
The model.
no,
No.
no, not the model, the person who this piece is based off of.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
And I would help her and take like model for her in her clothes. And I think that's really where like my fashion sense started.
Okay.
Because she would put me in these outfits where I was like, this was good. You know? Like I have never worn this before and I never thought to wear this before, but like I kind of feel really good in this. And she loves layers. She's a maximalist. And that's where I get all of my layering from. And like I feel like the most covered up is the most confident that I feel because there's like I don't know, it's a form of art. Like and that's why I like to dress up alongside my pieces because it's another form of just like world building and bringing like even an educational aspect. If people want to ask me more about the piece, they know exactly who to go up to, you know?
Right.
Like yeah.
Yeah.
And also I make sure to bring elements from what I'm actually working on into the outfits that I create so that way they're really realistic but also again something that I would wear. But so that way like let's say for example like the one for regalo, it's an outfit that I'd see my grandpa wear. Like
Aw.
I did wear one of my grandpa's shirts actually the day of, but like to honor these people who are working every single day in the rancho and like putting a twist of me now and how I want to be depicted now. And also, like, I brought botas from Mexico exactly from where my grandparents grew up. Like, I make sure
Wow.
that
Okay.
every single part of my outfit, it's always accounted for.
And so cool. It's like all of the little details and like hearing that every little thing might also have a significance of like where it's pulled from and sort of like the different connections.
And so that's why even like now I'm still wearing
The
the gloves
gloves.
because she's blue. But whenever I have a piece up somewhere, all of my outfits for that time period will be in reference to the art piece that's up.
That is true. When you're doing regalo, you're wearing a lot of horse gear or sort of a lot of like ranchero stuff.
And I try to find like queer creators, queer artists, and also just like artists who are already in the community and like doing work that is related to it. Like your shirt with
The rosary.
the rosary. And I mean, that's really why I wanted that shirt because I knew that this piece was coming up.
Oh.
And so I start gathering clothing really early on because I want to
Okay.
make sure that like not only am I bringing local artists with me because like clothing's a conversation started, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to like talk about you as an artist and then I get to talk about my own art and then I also get to talk about maybe where my family is from. Like, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So fashion is just very powerful.
It is such a like great conversation starter. There's so many elements you can talk about and like
Yeah.
great, 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 great. I love fashion.
I know we could dive in.
We really could. And like as you're saying this, I'm thinking also of like how remember how earlier I was like, oh, like these are like your singles. like the regalo. And so I'm thinking like, you know, when they have like a new era, they embody like the whole thing, and sort of like when a musician has a new era, they like change their outfit as well. And so as you're saying this, it kind of reminds me of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I never thought of it. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're like
Yeah.
fully like this is part of the rollout.
And this is my drag.
Yeah. This is, I mean, yeah, it is essentially a form of drag.
Yeah.
And you also work with a lot of musicians too, right? With photography.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of like
Interesting.
Mexican musicians and just musicians doing work within their own communities and speaking up and for and against. Yeah.
Slay.
Yeah.
I love, and I also really enjoy that. Yeah, you're like, I like getting that you enjoy getting clothes from or pieces as well of just like local artists and bring them up with it and like have that, I don't know, like bring them alongside with you, showcase them, and like, because I also feel like a lot of smaller artists have a lot of cooler shit.
They do. And what makes it fun is that you're not going to see it around,
Yeah.
which means more reason for you to come up to me because I'm really shy. I'm really, well,
Me too.
yeah.
That's
Like,
part of why I dress up, so people have like an excuse to come and talk to me.
that's exactly why I dress up.
Clothing is so powerful.
Yeah. So I hope that people come talk to me because I really, really enjoy talking to people, but I'm shy. And so it'll take me a lot of courage to go up to someone. So I really hope that my costuming will help with that.
I mean, I think it does. If I were to see you, I'd be like, "Hey, what is that? Like, tell me more.
No, literally, what is that?
Tell me more.
Who are you?
Who are you? You seem somebody of like, I don't know. You just
You
somebody
seem like an
interesting.
artist.
Yeah. Something tells me you're
Are
artistic.
you an artist?
Well, yes. Alrighty, love. Well, thank you so much. Would you like to tell the folks where they can find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok if it's not banned by the time this video gets out. At Yulissa, it's yu.lis.sa. And you could also go and look at my website. It's yulissamendoza.com.
Slay. And you guys can check me out everywhere, Art Perry, as well as my clips for the podcast, Red Thoughts Perry, I think is what they're mainly called. And my website, perrypicasso.com. But yeah, go check out the show. Go check out their work. Right now at the Cheech up until March 16 of 2025. And put Yulissa in your shows. They're an incredible artist. And I would love to see you in more spaces, take up even more space, and do even larger projects.
Thank you.
You're incredible. You're a star.
I will. We will.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be in those spaces together, actually.
Well, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Alrighty. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
We did. Okay, I'm scared.
See, I told you. It was